Life was perfect, or at least it seemed that way. My wife, Kim, was everything I had ever dreamed of in a partner. We were both just 26 when we got married, full of hope and excitement for the future. Kim was not just my wife. She was my best friend, my confidant, the one person who understood me better than anyone else. Together, we built a life we were proud of, a life filled with love, laughter, and dreams. Our daughter, Ifunanya, was born 2 years ago, and she brought even more joy into our lives. I remember the day she was born, the way Nkem's eyes shone with tears of happiness as she held our baby girl for the first time. We were over the moon, ready to tackle the world together as a family. I had a good job, we had bought a small house in the city, and with another baby on the way, our future looked bright. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. It was supposed to be a simple vacation, a brief escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. We had chosen a quiet town to visit, a place where we could relax and enjoy each other's company before our second child arrived. We didn't have a car, so we relied on motorbikes to get around the town. I remember how beautiful Nkem looked that day, her smile bright and her hand resting on her growing belly. Ifunanya giggled excitedly as she clung to me on the motorbike, unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. We were on our way back to the guest house when it happened. The motorbike carrying Nkem collided with a lorry. The sound of the crash will forever haunt me, a deafening roar that shattered my world in an instant. The motorbike driver died on the spot, and Nkem was left clinging to life by a thread. I rushed to her side, holding Ifunanya close as I screamed for help, my heart pounding with terror. At the hospital, the doctors did everything they could, but her injuries were too severe. I held her hand as she took her last breath, her eyes filled with fear and sorrow, knowing she would never meet our unborn child. I begged her to stay, to fight, but it was too late. She slipped away from me, leaving a void that nothing could ever fill. The doctors managed to save our baby, a son whom I named Chidi, but he was born too early, too fragile. He was placed in the ICU, his tiny body fighting for survival. I was torn between the crushing grief of losing Nkem and the desperate hope that Chidi would survive. I spent every waking moment by his side, my heart breaking with every beep of the machines that kept him alive. But life was relentless in its cruelty. After 2 months of clinging to hope, Chidi passed away in the early hours of the morning. I was holding his tiny hand when he took his last breath, just as I had held Nkem's. The pain was unbearable, a grief so profound that it felt like my heart had been ripped from my chest. I was left alone with nothing but the ghost of the life I once had. I had lost my wife, my son, and soon after, I lost my job. My savings, meant for our future, were gone, drained by the hospital bills. I was a shadow of the man I used to be, haunted by the memories of the family I had lost. Returning to our house was unbearable. Every corner, every object, every sound reminded me of Nkem and the life we had planned together. Ifunanya would wander through the house, calling out for her mother, not understanding why she was gone. Her cries echoed through the empty rooms, breaking my heart over and over again. The house that was once filled with love and laughter was now a tomb, a place where memories of happier times hung like ghosts. I couldn't bear to stay there. The walls seemed to close in on me, suffocating me with the weight of my grief. I packed our things and we moved in with my sister Adana, who welcomed us with open arms. Living with Adana was both a blessing and a burden. She tried her best to support me, to help take care of Ifunanya, but I felt like a burden. I was supposed to be the man, the father, the provider, but now I was reduced to depending on my sister for everything. I was grateful, but the shame and helplessness ate away at me. I struggled to find work, but nothing could match what I had before. I took odd jobs, anything to bring in some money, but it was never enough. Ifunanya needed me, but I was lost in my grief, barely able to function. There were days when I couldn't even get out of bed, the weight of my sorrow pressing down on me like a physical force. Every night, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the accident in my mind, wondering if there was something, anything, I could have done differently. The guilt consumed me. I felt like I had failed Nkem, failed our children, failed myself. The thought of remarrying felt like a betrayal to Nkem. How could I replace her? How could I let another woman into my heart when it still bled for the one I had lost? As the months passed, the well-meaning advice from friends and family began to pour in. You need to remarry, they would say. You're still young and Ifunanya needs a mother. Yet I could see the concern in their eyes. They feared I would drown in my grief, that I couldn't raise Ifunanya alone. And deep down, I feared they might be right. But the idea of bringing another woman into our lives filled me with dread. I didn't want a stranger trying to fill Nkem's shoes. Didn't want someone else's presence erasing the memories we had created together. I struggled with the decision, torn between my loyalty to Nkem's memory and the need to provide stability for Ifunanya. The pressure weighed heavily on me, adding another layer of guilt to the grief that already consumed me. But life, as relentless as it is, goes on. Slowly, painfully, I began to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I knew I had to be strong for Ifunanya. She was all I had left, the last piece of Nkem that I could hold on to. I started to build a new life, one small step at a time. It wasn't easy. Every step felt like a climb up a steep mountain, with the weight of my grief pulling me down. I found a job, not as good as the one I had lost, but it was something. I tried to be the father Ifunanya needed, even though I felt like I was failing every day. I moved out of Adana's house, determined to stand on my own 2 feet again. We found a small apartment, and I did my best to make it a home for Ifunanya. The pain is still there, and some days it feels as fresh as the day I lost them. But I am learning to live with it, to carry it without letting it crush me. I am trying to honor Nkem's memory by being the best father I can be, even though it feels like an impossible task. As time passed, I began to see glimpses of hope. Ifunanya started to smile again, her laughter slowly returning to fill the empty spaces in my heart. She became my anchor, the reason I got up each morning, the reason I kept going. The road to healing is long, and I am still at the beginning, but I am moving forward. I have learned that grief never truly goes away. It becomes a part of you, a shadow that follows you wherever you go. But I have also learned that life is resilient. Even in the darkest moments, there is a spark of light, a reason to keep fighting. There were times when I considered the possibility of moving on, of allowing someone new into my life. But every time I thought about it, guilt and sorrow gripped my heart. How could I love again when my heart still beat for Nkem? Wouldn't remarrying mean erasing her memory, replacing the love we shared with something new, something foreign? Ifunanya was my priority, and I worried that my refusal to remarry might leave her without the motherly care she needed. But I couldn't shake the fear that a new wife would never love her as Nkem had, would never understand the depth of our loss. The thought of bringing another woman into our home felt like an intrusion, an act of disloyalty to Nkem's memory. But there were also moments of weakness, times when I was overwhelmed with loneliness, with the crushing weight of being a single parent. During these times, I wondered if remarrying might offer some relief, some semblance of normalcy for Ifunanya and me. Yet every time I considered it, the image of Nkem's face would flash before my eyes, and I would be filled with a fresh wave of grief. Ifunanya is 4 years old now, and every day, she reminds me more of Nkem. Her smile, her laughter, the way she tilts her head when she's curious. They all bring back memories of the woman I loved. And while those memories still bring pain, they also bring comfort. They remind me of the love we shared, a love that I know will never fade, no matter what the future holds. I don't know if I will ever remarry. The thought still fills me with uncertainty and fear. But I do know that I will keep moving forward, one step at a time. I will continue to be the best father I can be to Ifunanya, and I will carry Nkem's memory with me always. Life is not what I thought it would be. It's filled with pain and loss, but also with moments of joy and love. I have learned that the human heart is stronger than I ever imagined. It can break, shatter into a million pieces, and yet somehow it can still beat, still find a way to keep going. And so I keep going, carrying my grief, my love, my memories with me. Because that's all I can do. Keep going, keep living, keep loving, even in the face of loss. Life is unpredictable and often cruel, but it is also resilient. We may face unimaginable pain and loss, but we must find the strength to move forward, to live for those we love and those we have lost. Remarrying or moving on is not a betrayal of the past, but a way to honor the love we once had by continuing to live in love, even in the face of overwhelming grief. The cry of a widower is not just a cry of sorrow, but also a cry of resilience, of the unyielding human spirit that refuses to give up, even when life is at its darkest. We must remember that even in our deepest pain, there is always hope, always a reason to keep going.